So the stigma around generational wealth online, on Twitter, and from the masses basically, it comes down to two things. One is, hey, if you give your kids money, what is going to encourage your kids to work hard and contribute to society? And the second being, if you die with a lot of money, your kids are going to fight over it, and it's torn many families apart. And yes, there are some negatives about generational wealth. With the money comes responsibility. But to say that it is not a positive, a net positive on a family, is just wrong. You look at who the most successful people in this world are, and most people don't want to admit this. The middle class people don't want to admit this. The wealthy people who raised terrible children don't want to admit this. But the people who achieve the most, the people who affect the most lives, the people who do the most good in this world, almost all of them come from money. And that's a fact. It is a cold, hard, inconvenient truth that with money, you can accomplish more, you can positively impact more people. And yes, money in the hands of a very competent person can 100x what they can accomplish. You look at the people who have accomplished the most in the world, their parents had money, the parents before them had money. They used that money to do a lot of good, to get their snowball rolling, to do more quicker. The people who are incompetent, they just live a life, right? The money makes them live a lot easier of a life. And the evil people, yes, the evil people, they go down in a ball of flames, they take others with them, and it is not a good situation, and they most likely lose everything. Now, where does the money come into that equation? Does the money make people good kids or bad kids, or good adults and bad adults? My answer to that is no. I don't think it's the money. I don't think it's the money. Money doesn't make somebody more or less likely to contribute to society. Money doesn't make somebody more or less driven. I know a lot of poor people who are very driven, and I know a lot of rich people who are very lazy, but I also know a ton of poor people that are lazy and a ton of rich people who are insanely driven. I think it all comes down to how they're raised. I think a well-raised human, a person who learns work ethic and delayed gratification and how to contribute and how to be a good member of society, can do a lot more if they have generational wealth at their disposal. Now, where do the problems arise? The problems of families getting torn apart by too much money and people fighting over it. That is the patriarch's problem and is the patriarch's fault 100%. If you have generational wealth, if you have a lot of money, and you're going to make the decision to not talk to anybody about it, to not make a plan for it, and to just die with it and let people figure it out, what do you expect to happen, right? What do you expect to happen? You just had your head in the sand for years, you pass away and let your kids fight it out? No. The way that you solve those problems is through communication and planning. You have a strategy, a plan in place, and if you don't, of course it's going to get ugly, and it's your fault. Another thing is the bad kid deal. There's a lot of very wealthy people who are against generational wealth and don't want to hand it off to their kids because they don't think their kids are good kids. And that is also your fault as a wealthy person. And one thing that I've learned over the years is that being a good parent is not correlated to how much money you have. There are many people who are so totally obsessed with their jobs, with making money, with being a good business person, that they make absolutely terrible parents. And they ignore their kids, and they don't teach them what they need to be taught. Delayed gratification, loyalty, sacrifice, grit, hard work, resourcefulness. I'm of the opinion that resourcefulness is the most important skill that anybody could have. I'm going to send my kids into the world with one thing: resourcefulness, how to solve problems, how to figure things out, how to do things for themselves. Now, the problem with wealthy families, many of them, is that they don't let kids figure things out. They solve the problems with money. Now, a healthy amount of suffering in this world is required to live a good life. If everything is easy all the time, you're not going to be happy, period. If you overcome some trials, if you face some challenges, if you deal with some pain and some suffering, that is how the good things about life, the fun things about life, become fun, become more enjoyable. And the problem with some wealthy families is they're not willing to let these kids suffer to earn money, to accomplish, to do anything worth doing. So you have a bunch of kids who are raised having never suffered, having been given everything, and they don't have what it takes. Obviously, they're soft. They can't be resourceful. They can't solve problems, and therefore they can't grow and contribute to society. That's a huge problem. So one thing that I'm going to do, and honestly, I've been thinking a ton about all this because I'm in the situation now where I have to start thinking about generational wealth. It may sound arrogant for me to say, but I have to start thinking about future planning and how to raise good kids when we have enough money at our fingertips to do whatever we want to do the rest of our lives. What does that mean for me? Well, I'm going to teach my kids about the value of a dollar. I think that is where a lot of very wealthy people mess up. They don't teach the kids how hard certain folks have to work for a dollar. So I'm going to start my kids at the very bottom and show them that manual labor for 10, 11, 12, 15 bucks an hour is how a lot of people make a living. And you're going to understand that. You're going to understand how hard it is. Then you have the whole an entire other side of the spectrum with the delayed gratification and the hard work that's required to get the value of a dollar, to being able to get up and do things that you don't want to do right now so that you can enjoy things later on. And I'm going to teach my kids that. I'm going to teach my kids how to work hard for something that maybe it's not right around the corner tomorrow, but it's 10 years from now. They're working, or a year from now, or 2 weeks from now when you get a paycheck. Whatever it is, it's all relative. So those two things, teaching your kids that stuff is not easy when you got a ton of money, and it takes work. If you're not willing to do the work, your kids aren't going to have the skills needed to build a successful life and be contributing members of society. So, and I've also been thinking a lot about what it takes to move up and down the rungs of society, meaning to go from poor to middle class to wealthy. And we have an example. My grandfather came here with nothing, graduated high school, was the first in his long lineage to graduate high school, and went to work as a laborer for $4 an hour back in the 1930s, and actually the 1950s, because my mom and dad were born in the 60s, and he worked hard enough and delayed gratification long enough and saved money long enough to send his kids to college, my mom and dad. And my mom and dad they went from poor to middle class. I was born middle class. When my parents die, I'm not going to be given multiple millions of dollars. I'm going to be given a few $100,000 as an inheritance that I'll get when I'm 65, when my parents pass away. That is a large portion of Americans in the middle class deal with that. But the way my parents went from middle class to, or I think taking a step back, going from poor to middle class is damn near impossible without a committed relationship between parents. Good parenting. It all comes back to good parenting. Passing along generational wealth in a successful way comes to good planning, good communications, good parenting, raising good kids that can be good stewards of money. Same thing goes from going from poor to middle class. If your parents are not in the picture, if your dad's not in the picture, if you don't have the hierarchy of needs, the base needs, the emotional needs of love and safety, if you don't have those things, there's no way that you can succeed in this society. So all the folks who are born without fathers in the picture are totally screwed, and the statistics show it, and it's very sad, and it's almost impossible to move up out of poverty in those situations. Then you have middle class to upper class. I think that I was able to move from middle class to upper class because my father, he didn't own the company and he didn't generate massive amounts of wealth, but he learned a very valuable skill by working for a very wealthy real estate developer. He learned about real estate development. He started doing a very high value job. And he didn't necessarily do what it took to start his own company and build massive amounts of wealth and take that leap himself, but he passed that on to me. And that is what shifted me from middle class to wealth, is my dad finding a way to do some high value work and instilling the knowledge of starting a small business. My dad taught me that, of building a building. He consulted me to do that. And here I am. So moving up and down the rungs of society, it can also go the other way. You can be wealthy and you can teach your kids nothing about the value of a dollar, nothing about hard work, nothing about contributing to society. And boom, before long, your lineage is going to go back down a rung. They're going to run out of money. They're going to stop contributing to the world, and they're going to end up worse off. But it's just absolutely fascinating to me how demonized generational wealth is, and how people are saying that I would rather give my kids nothing and give them the tools they need to make money. Obviously, yes. But these people are in denial about how the world works. They're in denial about how hard it is to move from poor to middle class to wealthy. America is probably the easiest place in the world that it is to move among those three classes, but it's virtually impossible to do so if you don't have a very unique mindset and a very unique parents that work well together and teach you the right things. And if you are passing on generational wealth to other people, you got to understand that, hey, look, money is what allows the world to go round, period. Like, if you don't believe that, your head is in the sand. These are the rules that we've played with. This is the rules that have governed the way the world works forever. Money is power, period. And if you don't have it, you got to find a way to get it. And you look at the people who are successful, look around you in your town, look on the internet, look at the entrepreneurs, look at the people on Twitter. All the people who are successful, 75% of them came from money. 75%. And you're going to sit here and tell me that money's not important and that passing generational wealth is overrated? Okay, yeah. It's an amplifier. Money is an amplifier. If you raise good kids who with good ideas, with ways to help, with ways to contribute, who know how to make money, who know how to start businesses, who know how to do X, Y, and Z, it's going to amplify their lives. It's going to amplify them up. They're going to be able to accomplish 100 times more because of your wealth that you pass them and your knowledge that you pass them. If you raise average kids, it's going to have them above average happiness, normal people. And if you raise bad kids, it's going to amplify them on the way down. They're going to go down in a big ball of flames like we see all the time. So just keep that in mind. Money is an amplifier and money is power. And with it comes responsibility, but it is not something that should be demonized. And I am a huge fan of passing along generational wealth, but doing the work to raise good kids. Too many business people, too many wealthy people do not do the work to raise good kids. And that's the problem. It's not the money. It's the fact that they're not being good parents and they're not planning and they're not doing the work required to pass generational wealth along the way.